Dave, a guy walks into a dentist office. He says, "You got to help me. I think I'm a moth." Dentist goes, "If that's true, pal, you should be going to a licensed psychotherapist, somebody that can help you with your problem." The man says, "I know." Dentist says, "But I'm a dentist." Man says, "I know." Dentist says, "Well, why are you here?" Man says, "Light was on."
Damn it! Good. Brad, I'm angry. Isn't
that a beautiful joke?
That's a great joke.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
That's a great. I appreciate a good dad joke, and that one's really solid. That lands. By the way, I did not anticipate where that was going.
I know.
I was trying to forecast how is a dentist connected to a moth? The light was on.
It was perfect misdirection. I used to, every now and again when I would talk in my storytelling class, I would say, if you want to learn how to tell a great story, learn how to tell a good joke. Yeah. Because it's all there. And the misdirection was right there. You know, I'm a moth. I know I'm a moth. And I'm at the dentist office and you're like, what's going on? And then the answer is so simple. The light was on.
Let me deconstruct this with you because it's curious to talk about. Is dentist such a strong choice of a location that you couldn't sub out for accountancy or you need the specificity of going to a place, checking in with a place?
Yeah.
And the weirdness that is dentistry already? Is that part of the magic of that?
Also, for me, part of it also is that if you're sitting in the dentist chair, what's right above your head?
Oh yeah,
there's
so specifically the bright light. Yeah.
It's and that's why I think it works, because at a CPA, of course, it's gonna be a well lit office, but the light is kind of like part of the setting, but it's not it's not overbearing. It's you've got the mental image, and you didn't even know that was part of the mental image. When he says to the light, it's the first time you recognize that it was there, but it was there all along.
Right. That's anyway. You got me.
Isn't that amazing?
Good job, Bradley John. You got me on that one. That was good work. And on that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about making comics
and making a moth from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his pal Dave Kellett, the cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of the documentary Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. And we have a special episode for everybody today because we have a beautifully, wonderfully long, delightful interview with Lucy Knisley. And this was done, Brad, up at Alaska Comics Camp that we go to, or that I go to every year outside of Juneau. And I've been such a fan of Lucy's work. And we met finally for the first time, I think it was last year or 2 years ago. No, it was last year. And just a delightful human being. And so I asked Lucy if I could pull her aside outside. And so this interview that you're about to hear was conducted outside at Alaska. So if you occasionally hear a gigantic raven dive bomb our heads, or some kind of squirrel or raccoon or a chipmunk coming at us, that's what that is. And occasionally you may hear a logging truck like barreling down the road across the valley there, and it kind of echoes across the valley. So you may hear one or two of that. But in general, it was a delightful talk. So Lucy, you need to know, is a best-selling author and artist of numerous graphic novels about food, family, cats, babies, travelogues, also delightful. As I said, I think Lucy is a delightful human being, fantastic, joy-filled, confident line quality. And then when you're done listening to this wonderful interview with Lucy, I want you to check out these titles. French Milk, delightful. I think that was her first big breakout book. Stepping Stones and Apple Crush, one of which I have in my hand right here, actually. It just so happens that it's in the podcasting closet with me. Delightful YA novels. And then I would also recommend Woe, A House Cat's Story of Despair. Just a great book. Yeah, I know it's also a great title. But in addition to that, Lucy also has like 7, 8 other books, maybe 9 other books to recommend. But those are my personal 4 to jump into first with Lucy. But without further ado, here is Lucy up at Alaska Comics Camp, and have a listen. Lucy, to start us off, though, there's so many areas we could go in terms of loves of ukuleles, loves of cats, loves of travelogues. But just tell me from a basic standpoint, when did you start cartooning in your own life?
I did it as a kid, the way that a lot of kids do, just instinctively. I had a teacher in like first grade who taught me how to just take copier paper and fold it in half and staple it. And I loved books so much that I just like, I wanted to plagiarize them. Like I wanted some kind of ownership over these books that I would read. So I would basically make these little books and I would kind of transcribe the books that fascinated me with my own illustrations. And I would okay, well, to preface this, I have a phobia of snakes. And this is one of those things that I'm like, snakes are so cool to draw and they're so beautiful and they're so interesting. And I know they're essential to the environment and all this stuff. But it's a phobia. If I see one in person, I like levitate off the ground and like blast myself.
The toes act like a 19.
Yeah, it makes like a Looney Tune sound as I'm running away. But these creatures have always been so terrifying to me, but fascinating at the same time. And I had this weird dichotomous thing with this snake book in my classroom in first grade, where there was this book and it was just like pictures of snakes and then like really simple sentences about snakes underneath the pictures. It was just
living creatures. Screaming at it.
Yeah, and I would, it would like. I'd like hold it at arm's length and like look at it out of the corner of my eye to sort of process this book. But I was also really fascinated by it. So that was one of the first ones that I remember transcribing into this handmade book format, this snake book. And it was called Amazing Snakes. And I have these books. My mom kept them, these books that I would make as a first grader. And so I have Amazing Snakes, this plagiarized snake textbook with like drawings of all of the snake pictures that I would make in first grade.
So now that you have this book of your early drawings, because we were talking as a group of cartoonists here in Juneau, Alaska, that with school visits, it's fun to show kids our own younger days cartoonings. Have you ever done that? I've never done
that.
I
have them in all of my school visits. And in fact, I have all of these examples from this stack that my mother has kept over the course of my life. And I have individual pages from some of these books, not the ones that I was plagiarizing, but the ones that I started making on my own. And the topics that I include in my school presentations are like, here's one I made about cats. And it's like drawing a cat and it says like kittens are very cute. So are cats. And then I go on and I show and like, here's one about food. And it was like Lucy's recipe book for pies. And it's like me eating pie and like
that's the recipe.
That's the recipe. It's like, this is pecan pie. Here's me eating it. Like that's my recipe as a first
Tune
grader.
in next week when Grandma's made a pumpkin. There we go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the third one that I do in my school visit is just sort of like one that this is my best friend. Our classroom has a pet turtle kind of thing.
That's very pure.
And it's really interesting because then I go on to 3 more slides and I'm like, now I'm an adult. I'm a professional artist and I'm very serious. And obviously my work is very different. So here's this book that I've made about cats. And I show my book, Whoa, which is just drawings and funny cartoons about cats.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and this is my book about food. And I show Relish, which is just recipes and drawings of food.
The through line. Yeah.
And then I'm like, and then all of my other books are basically about like my everyday life and the things that inspire me. And so it's cool because kids can see that like the things that fascinated me enough to make books about and comics about when I was in first grade are still the things that are inspiring me now.
In a way, you and I are quite literally living the dream of our 10, 11, 12-year-old selves because I am doing exactly what 12-year-old me wanted to be doing, and what a joy that is. But speaking of kids, and this is the highest compliment that I as a cartoonist can give to another cartoonist, is that you have brought joy to my kids as a cartoonist. And I want to say thank you to you for that.
Oh, that is so cool.
It's so nice to get a compliment from a peer, and it's so nice to get a compliment from a fan. But getting a compliment from a parent for the joy that you've brought their children is such a nice and unique feeling.
That is my favorite one. That is
So thank you for bringing joy to the Kellett house, by the way.
That's the
specific compliment, is thank you for that.
My pleasure. The other compliment that I love is when I hear from parents that my baby book is their baby's favorite book and that they read that baby book and they have that memorized now because they read it so many to their baby. And I'm like, oh, yes. I am now a part of your baby's psyche forever.
This is the foundational moment of memories, and yeah. So okay, so you've been cartooning since a kid. When did it start getting serious for you? Was it high school? Was it college? Was it post college? When did you start saying, I'm going to make a mini. I'm going to go to a show. I'm going to do this. I'm going to really try for it. I actually don't know what you studied. Actually, let's start there.
Okay.
Does that get it very froofy and fancy if we start talking about that?
A little bit. I don't know. I had an interesting arc coming to comics because I always read them and I always made them, like as Amazing Snakes back in the day.
Now published by Random House.
Yeah, right.
The Amazing Snakes.
I'm gonna send it in as a pitch. But comics were scarce when I was a kid. The youth graphic novel thing had not happened.
Did not exist.
Did not exist at all. And so my access to comics was either I would go to the newspaper stand and I would buy Archie comics, and I had a subscription to Archie comics later on, and I was like part of the Archie fan club.
Wait, can we pause there? Because
yeah.
I also read Archie only when my family was on road trips, because for some reason we would stop at a grocery store and they'd be like, "This will entertain Dave."
Yeah,
and
it's the only comic.
That's all we have. It's either this or Sports Illustrated, and he cares not at all for sports. So, but what was the Archie fan club? What did you do? I don't know about this.
So
was this on the back of the Archie books?
Early 90s, when I would join, very early 90s, they had a mail order subscription called the Archie Fan Club, and it was in the back of the book. And you would fill out like a, cereal box top essentially and send it in with a check. Sure.
Yes. To Albuquerque, probably.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And then every week I would get Archie comics in the mail.
Wow.
And it was amazing. And to this day, I have so many Archie comics. Yeah. I have like long boxes of Archie comics in my life that my mother, like when I bought my first house, was just like, here you go.
Yeah.
And
now they're yours.
They're mine now. And
they're out of my attic. Yeah.
My kid is reading them is like very weird.
They hold up, but they're weird, but they hold up.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's because in the early 90s, I was reading Archie comics set in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Right.
Like, and I was like, okay, I'm going with it. Like Archie and the gang are in the 60s in this one, and they're all wearing like cool 60s clothes. And I was just like, okay, I'm here for it. Like this is what's happening now. And so for my kid to read ones that are set in the 90s, that were made in the 90s, is like similar.
They're listening to like Sonic Youth, and you're like, this feels odd. I don't know how I feel about
this. There's like a grunge one.
Like Jughead should be in a 1930s car that's kind of salvaged and still, it's like, it's not, in the 60s. But it's funny because I don't equate Archie being foundational, but like I read Archie as a kid, and I don't think about it a lot, but you're right. It was a foundational comic for me.
You
as a
could buy
cartoonist.
it at the grocery store, like what other comics could you say that about? Like Mad Magazine.
And it was like, much like Japanese stuff, it was a satisfying thickness.
Thick. Yeah.
It was thick.
You could get a double digest. And
yes,
that would get you through the whole road trip.
Yep. All the way to grandma's. I got my Archie.
Right.
But so you've inherited all of them. So anyway, so to get back to your path. So I'm sorry about that.
There weren't other comics. I read a lot of Calvin and Hobbes. I read Foxtrot. I read Garfield, that kind of thing, which were more newspaper style comics, which is not my format now. But there just wasn't any. And then I got to high school and I started reading Sandman and Terry Moore and all of the Vertigo stuff and stuff of the late 90s,
little
early
dark,
2000s.
maybe a little,
like a little gothy. Put my eyeshadow on and read these comics. So it's like this through line of comics in my life that I've always loved them and I've always read them and I've always drawn them, but I didn't put it together that this was a real job.
Right.
Like it just seemed like they kind of sprang from the ether, that there was no connection.
And you
to
had
creator.
no one in your life that was artist, professional, semi-professional, that could say, well, no, you could do this. Or
I had artists, but they were all like sculptors and painters.
Well,
and I had a ton of chefs, and a lot of chefs work in like music. So
that explains the foodie stuff. So
right. So it was a very creative environment, but nobody was doing quote unquote commercial art. No one was making comics. And I think there was a little bit of a like snootiness about it, where these were all like, Tribeca, New York City, like in the 80s and 90s, these kind of like punk rockers.
Right.
So no one was doing this. And I don't know why it just happened that way. But interestingly enough, my dad was in advertising for a period of his life. So that was my exposure to commercial art early on. And I would like go to my dad's office sometimes and he would give me pages of what are they called? Commercial screen, not like, what you draw. You draw it now for animation. What are they called?
Oh boy.
We've been in the woods long enough that our
And we're also
brains are
both
disconnected.
just tired enough where we're like,
yeah.
oh yeah, I remember.
We know the thing you're talking
You know
about.
the thing with the thing.
Yeah,
on top of the thing.
storyboards.
There we go.
Storyboards.
Yes,
So
God.
he would give me like pads of storyboards for used in commercials, like, and it was like the 90s, so it was like beer commercials that my dad was working on.
Right.
So I would like draw my own beer commercial comics, and my dad still has some of these because like my parents are. They keep all of my artwork because I'm an only child and I'm a precious princess. But that's like also I was making these comics.
Yeah, that's absolutely a comic.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's just so interesting to me because it was never on my radar as a job. So I had a really, really bad high school experience, as so many of us creative types do.
Right.
Where I went to 4 different high schools in 4 years, and it was heavily implied that I was kind of fucked up, and like it was undiagnosed ADHD and also sort of authority, fuck you kind of thing.
Right.
So I hated high school. And in the course of that time, not one person was like, hey, these comics are pretty good, until I was in like my senior year and I had a great art teacher and he was like, your art is really good. You should apply to art school. And the art schools back then did not have comics programs. So if you wanted to go to school for comics, you went to one of the schools with arts programs. You went to like SVA.
And maybe focused on illustration or
Right.
as the best case proximity to comics. Yeah.
But the art schools that were kind of on the radar of my teacher and my parents were fine arts programs, fine arts schools.
Right.
And look, my dad is an academic. He's the dean of faculty at FIT now. So now he's very like secondary education is very important. And he really wanted me to go to liberal arts school. And like I could study art there if I had to, and then my mom's a chef, and so she was like, "You don't even have to go to school," kind of thing. So the compromise is that I would go to what some article that my father read called the Harvard of art schools.
And that was enough. That was like, all right.
Right?
Well,
He was
now,
like,
now
that's the one.
Now you have the sign off.
Yeah.
Right.
So I applied and got into the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, which is a great school, great arts program, very fine arts based, and at the time did not have any comics stuff. Now they have a wonderful.
Was that your
comics
first
program.
big city living, by the way?
No, I'm from New York City originally.
For some reason I thought, okay, keep going. Yeah.
My parents split when I was 7, so my mom moved upstate to the country, and I split my time.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of the book, but okay.
So I got like deep country and the most urban experience kind of juxtaposed in my childhood.
The largest metropolis and a farm. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And like did not experience a suburb until I was an adult. So anyway, so I spent 4 years at the School of the Art Institute, and I arrived there and I pretty quickly realized, oh shit, I actually want to make comics.
Right.
And there's no classes for that. But I had just changed schools 4 times in 4 years. So I was like, I don't want to do that for college.
Right.
Like I got to stick with
I'm
this one
staying
school.
here. Yeah. I'm putting down roots and I'm staying
Exactly.
here. Yeah.
So I stuck it out. And I think that's really good of me. I think it was a good decision because I got this really, really fine arts education, and it didn't like, it didn't Cal Arts me. It didn't like funnel me into a type of drawing.
Right.
Type of making comics. Like I was learning how to use encaustics and sculpting and like performance art and stuff that all helps me with my comics now.
Right. It all informs it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So I think I got this kind of interesting comics education there. But what, of course, was the more helpful thing is that when I was a freshman, I started publishing in the school newspaper, and my comics were seen by a senior while I was a freshman there. And that senior is Hope Larson.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, that helped. Yeah.
Of Chiggers and Gray Horses.
Yeah.
And she's an incredible artist, an incredible comic artist. And she was like, you're a girl doing comics.
So she pulled you aside, I'm assuming.
Yeah. She wrote me an email on the like school server and was like, hey, you're doing comics. You're a woman doing comics here at the school. Nobody else is doing this. We should hang out. And I was like, yes, please. That would be awesome. I would really love that. So it was with Hope that I first went to my first TCAF.
Lovely.
Yeah, and that was really cool. And I was like,
And would that have been drivable from Chicago? Toronto's drivable.
We did.
From
We road
Chicago,
tripped
right?
it.
Is
Yeah.
that like 7-8 hours? What is that?
Yeah,
Okay, so it's fun. You get to talk with Hope the whole way. That's great.
Exactly.
Okay,
and like Hope and I collaborated on a little mini comic.
Yeah.
And we took it there.
Split a hotel room probably.
We
Saved
did
a little
not
money.
split a hotel room.
Oh, wow. Look at Daddy Warbucks over here with the
No,
extra.
because we were sleeping on Brian Lee O'Malley's sister's couch.
Sure, as one does.
Yeah.
As one does. I mean, listen, it's the universal truth that all of us in our 20s going to comic shows, like you find the couch you can find.
Right.
Like,
yeah. You sleep on a floor, you've put like 4 people in a bed in a hotel room.
Yeah,
like
absolutely,
it just happens. And I did that for so long. And now if I did that, it would kill me. Like my body would crumble into dust in the morning. But yeah, so that was my first exposure to like professional comic artists in person. Before that, I had been publishing on a little platform we call a live journal.
I am familiar, yes.
And that's how I met all of the heavy hitters that are heavying and hitting today. Like Raina was my live journal friend, and Vera Brosgol, and Jess Fink, Erica Moen. Just this like list of amazing comic artists working today.
Yeah.
We're all like my teenage live journal buddies.
Yeah.
And it was a small community, and we were all very supportive of one another. And we were all just starting out, experimenting. Like I remember when Raina posted her first, like, I'm going to make this webcomic about my teeth.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
we were all kind of like, cool. Yeah. This is
sure.
really cool.
That could work. Yeah.
Make it a mini. and then so we went to.
But can I pause you for a second? Because that was such a magical time of life in the sense that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, I felt like I was, for the most part, flying solo, trying to do comics here and there. And it's like, I don't know how I'm going to get into it. Boy, the newspapers and big too. And it's not really for me. I don't know if I can. But then you sort of found this little tiny found tribe online.
Yeah.
And it was just magical for about 3, 4, 5 years there. Where
It really was.
I mean, there's no follow up to that other than like it was great.
Like the internet
I just felt less alone
animal.
all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, I felt like, okay, I'm not. There's these people will share what they know. I will share what we know. We'll pay it forward to whatever other miscreant follows along with us, and we'll teach each other how to do it. And it was a fun time of life, I think.
It was like not just the youth and like the energy to devote to this online space, but the internet was just a completely different animal. It didn't suck your soul the way that it does today.
Right.
It was just this kind of Wild West. There were no ads. There was no influencing. There was no, algorithms trying to get your work out there and seen. It was just like, I have a little blog, and sometimes I post drawings, and sometimes I write about how much I hate math. And like, that was it. And we were all just sort of like finding each other and hanging out.
And there wasn't even like some sort of social climbing aspect to it. It was just like, oh, Ryan North suggested I try out this cartoonist, Kate Beaton. Oh, wow, they're really lovely. This is lovely work. Oh, great. Now I have 2 new people to follow.
Like
this
it was
is
definitely not social climbing because none of us had any published
we had nothing to climb. Yeah.
So Hope brings me to my first TCAF, which is like where I met Vera for the first time. And I think I met Raina there for the first time. Raina thinks it was at a different show, but I am younger than Raina by a couple years. So I'm like, my memory's better. But this is when TCAF was in a tent in a parking lot.
Oh, I never went to Tent TCAF.
Oh, Tent TCAF was real back in the day. It was
what's their name still running TCAF at the first?
Chris,
Was Chris still running?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The first, I think I went to 3 of them, but they were all at the library, so I never got to. The tent is fun.
The tent was pretty fun. So we were like I was perched at a little end of a table with the little mini that Hope and I had made. And we had like that morning been doing like potato stamping on the cover of the little
very
mini comic.
Pure.
It was
at
really
the end
pure.
table at the Kinko's that's around the block.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was my first exposure, and I met all these other people in person who were like maybe my live journal friends, but were starting to get into it professionally or just like, doing it and having a day job at the same time. And it was like, this is like an industry that people are doing. This is a job people have. So I finished out my art degree after that, but I was like, this is it. This is what I'm doing for sure. I love this. And then I was like working at a cheese shop and making my comics in my spare time. Fueled by lots of cheese. I got to eat for free.
Yeah, that's great.
And then I graduated and I was like, okay, I know how to draw, but I really, and I've taken a lot of writing classes. The School of the Art Institute of Chicago has a great writing program. So that was a real benefit. So So I was like, I know how to write and I know how to draw and I'm making comics, but I feel like I could really benefit from some technical, like how to combine these two sort of things and like being exposed to people that know things about Photoshop and scanning and stuff that I don't know. So I want a long-term convention exchanging of ideas, essentially. So they had just started the Center for Cartoon Studies at the time.
In Vermont,
In
right?
Vermont, yeah. And they were
At the
offering...
White River Junction.
White River Junction,
yeah.
So they were offering a graduate level program and I was like, great, I have this undergraduate in fine arts and now I will like get some years of real study of this medium under my belt. And
was it a 1-year program, 2-year program?
It's a 2-year master's.
2 years master's. Okay.
And obviously like my parents were like, oh, a master's degree. Oh, that sounds great. And I was like, yeah, in comics, but whatever, yeah, that's fine. So I applied and got a scholarship and it was only its like second or third year being a school.
In existence?
Yeah. Existed. And so it's pretty rough. They were really sort of figuring it out at the time. And I was coming from this 4-year arts program and a lot of the other students in my class were like coming out of high school or they'd like, only made one comic in their entire life before. So,
and meanwhile, the institution was still figuring out, is this a classroom or is this going to be an administrative room or is this a hallway or is that, right?
Is this a
it's
teacher
not a big
or
physical
a seminar?
Space, right?
No, it's a tiny little like old storefront.
Right.
And so they were really figuring out the format of the classes and like what to do. And I came in with this really disparate level class. And so they were like, all right, now we have to spend 6 months just like getting everybody kind of art 101 up to speed levels.
Gotcha.
And I was coming from this 4-year art program. So I was kind of like, can I just skip this one? Like, I don't want to do like color theory 101.
I know what a Conte pencil is.
Yeah. So it was not a great fit for me right off the bat.
Right.
It's an amazing program. The visiting artists alone are like well worth it. But there was just something about my class and something about the early days of the school. It was just not a good fit for me. And so I didn't really enjoy the cold and things.
I'm just trying to think of other pals that I know that have gone there. Was Tilly there when you were there?
No, Tilly was after me.
Tilly was after you. Okay,
yeah.
Okay. That's the one pal I had. There we go. That's the one. That was just the party talk of like trying to put 2 and 2 together. But okay, so you're the first 6 months are not so good, but the final 18 months. You're like, oh, was it more independent stuff of like
the
guided?
The second year I did completely
work?
Remotely.
Yeah.
I went back to Chicago. It's not standard practice, and I'm not sure if they'll even let anybody do it anymore because I was kind of like, see ya.
You're like, I'll still pay the checks, but I'm going back to Chicago.
Right. And my thesis advisor was out in the Midwest and stuff, so I was like, this makes logical sense. But yeah, so the first 6 months I was kind of like frustrated and kind of butting heads a little bit with the faculty because I was kind of like, this is basic stuff. I don't need to do this. And it wasn't for all the classes. Like the Steve Bissett classes were great because it was about comics history and it was really technical and it was really like fascinating and cool. And all the visiting artist stuff was great. But on top of all of this, I was burning out because I'd just done 4 years of fine art school. Straight out of school, I published my first book.
Right.
And then I was...
Which, by the way, real quick, just talk about the process of that.
Sure. Yeah. So that was a travelogue called French Milk. And I took it to MoCA, the Museum of Comic and Cartoon Arts Festival. And I was just a senior in college at the time. And this was right around when Alison Bechdel's Fun Home was winning lots of awards.
Right. So people were looking to pick up new titles.
Yeah, traditional publishers who'd never published a graphic novel before were like, oh, this is something. We should maybe get on this. So they started forming imprints and sending editors out to like find talent.
Right.
And one of those editors with an imprint of Simon & Schuster came to MoCA and picked my self-published version of this travelogue up and was like, interesting. And we had a little chat. And then later on, I got an email from her just being like, hey, I think our imprint would be interested in publishing this for Real.
Right.
So that's how I got my first publishing gig.
And
which
21, what was that reaction for you? Were you holy shit, yes.
Yeah, holy shit, yes. And they send me this contract and it's printed on like funny sized paper and stuff, and I'm like, I didn't learn about this in art school. Fuck. And I had been familiar enough with the comics industry and other people that I had met at like TCAF and stuff to know that people were getting fucked by.
Right. So like, did you reach out to Hope and be like, what do I do? How do I?
Not to Hope.
Right.
But I was like, I think this is what an agent does. I think this is what an agent is for.
Gotcha.
So to get my agent, I did this very basic, like 20-year-old thing where I was like, okay, who has a career that I would like to kind of emulate? And I was like, well, obviously Alison Bechdel. She's like the GOAT and she's getting all these awards and like she's reinvigorated the whole medium and like people who thought comics were stupid are now being like, this is a real art form. So I was like, she's got great stuff. I wonder if I could find someone who's worked with her so they know what I'm aiming for to be my agent. So I'm like looking this thing up and I find this woman who used to be her publicist and is getting into agenting. And I just send her this email and I'm like, hi, I'm a child. And I've done most of your job. Like I have the contract. The contract is here in my hands.
Yes.
All I need is somebody to look at it, make sure I'm not getting fucked, and like maybe hold my hand through this process and tell me if I'm like, you know, if this is all good. And she was like, yeah, this sounds like a sweet gig for me.
I like it. Yeah.
Like you've done 90% of my job. And, you know, she looked at my work and she was like, this is cool. And so that is my agent of the past, like 20 years.
Wow. Who did you go with?
This is Holly Bemis with the Susan Rabner agency.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very
and
cool.
it was like this kind of perfect timing where she was just getting into agenting at the time. And I was just starting my career and she's really cool. And she's like this queer woman and she only works with like women doing cool stuff. And, you know, she could be kind of picky. And so I was like, this is awesome. This is what I want. Yeah. And
but honestly, as far as life advice, generalized life advice, choosing a thing based on people that you like or people that you're like, that's a path, you know, and that's a solid way to choose what cities to move to, who to work with, how to do things. I've used that many a way. And it's
what
a
are
good
they
way.
doing? I want to do that too.
They seem like a nice person. That seems like a nice path. I'll do that. And it's a solid way when you're 20 years old to make a decision. There's certainly worse, you know?
Oh, definitely.
So it comes out and now you've got the book and my memory of it was that it did well. Is that a false memory or is that maybe I just thought it was great? I mean, what was the reaction to it?
There weren't a lot of graphic novels being published at the time.
Right.
And so it came out and this imprint didn't really know how to sell it because they'd only sold traditional prose books before.
Which is, by the way, a common problem that we see with publishers that like, I'm going to get into comics. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to like sell this book the way I would sell a traditional published book. And then it doesn't work. And they're like, well, I guess comics are just a, flash in the pan anyway.
It can't be me. It must be these teens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So this imprint published like my book, a book by Ariel Schrag and a book by Jeffrey Brown. And that was their foray into comics.
Right.
And I've subsequently talked to both Ariel and Jeffrey about this, and we were like, "That was pretty fucked up, right? Yeah,
like
that was bad.
That went bad for you too, right?
Yeah, like what were they thinking?" And so they were sending us to like Barnes and Nobles and stuff.
Yeah,
and I kept being like, "Well, what about this like comic convention?" And they'd be like, "What is that? No, we've never heard of that."
Were the marketing materials weird? Like, was it like that's not what I would choose to do?
Like they were marketing it in weird places, and they were really marketing it to book people instead of comics people.
Right. They did what they knew.
Yeah, they did what they knew, and I think they did their best, but their reaction was kind of like, well, we tried, and now I guess comics are not a thing anymore. So.
Can't be done.
Yeah.
If we can't do it, can't be done.
Exactly.
But okay, so the book comes out, and I had stopped you. You were gonna say what you were doing at that time in your life, though.
So I had a book contract, and I was in grad school. So I was I had put out my first book already, and a lot of the people in this grad program were just starting out, making comics, not even close to publishing. And so I was like really up on my high horse about myself where I was like, I don't need this.
Right. I'm going back to Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah.
What the heck with all of you.
And in retrospect, I got so much out of it and it was really cool. And I got to meet Alison Bechdel. But it is a little bit of a meat grinder because it really burns you out. It just doing nothing but comics for a full year in the woods and in the dead of winter in New England.
Right.
And it was also a weird year socially because my class had something like 2 women in it and the rest were men.
Which is weird energy.
That's weird energy. And a lot of the dudes were into comics that I wasn't really interested in. And they were super big into like, let's just get together and play video games.
Right.
And so there were like a lot of aggressive male energy in the room.
Right.
And I was like, this is not the vibe for me. Like, I do not dig this. I'm cold. This town is weird. And everybody is kind of mean. So
there's not a lot of options because it's a town of 3,000, 4,000.
Yeah,
right?
and
in
at
terms
the
of like, there's not a lot of other places to go. In terms of like, it's cold out. I can't just hang out outside.
Yeah. Now, White River Junction's amazing. Like,
oh, really? Is it
all
different
this
than
really cool stuff. Yeah, I was talking to Jared about this, who lives there and works there and stuff, and he was talking about all this cool stuff that they have now, and I was like, what?
Because they've subsequently gotten like a lot of state grants and stuff.
Yeah.
And like a lot of
And it's built its reputation, and more students come. And so it did exactly what the project was supposed to do. So what happened was there was this derelict town in the middle of Vermont that was at a crossroads of intersections. So a lot of truckers would stop at this town. It was originally White River Junction. It was the train junction. So a lot of freight train stuff would come through this town. So
it sprang up solely by being a junction.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so it serviced, transportation of goods and materials. And what often happens in those situations is that what kind of things do truckers need at a truck stop? They need to maybe the touch of a woman and they maybe want to have a little fun.
Right. They're going to need a beer. They're going to need a gas up. They're going to need a place to sleep.
And maybe they need something a little stronger to keep them awake on the road. So
I like how I'm all naive about it.
Yeah,
they
you're
just
like,
need
a beer.
a place
They
to sleep and a sandwich.
Very wholesome.
Yeah, they're all back on the road. And you're like, nope, it was dark.
Yeah, it was pretty
not
dark.
what you
So
want.
it had become the methamphetamine capital of New England.
Oh, great. Okay. I could not have been further off. I'm imagining a quality sandwich and a cup of soup. And you're like, no, it was speedballs. It was speedballs. And that's what they wanted.
During the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
This was happening. And it's surrounded by these really affluent towns. It's where all these really picket fences, white clapboard houses,
very Vermont,
beautiful, very Vermont, and it's right on the border of New Hampshire, so it's where Dartmouth is and stuff like that. So it's really fancy,
and there's old
New
money.
Englandy, old money stuff. And then there's this one town right in the middle of all of it that's kind of embarrassing for all of these rich people that lived around.
Hey, sugar, you driving to New York? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and exploding trailers and stuff. So the surrounding area and the Chamber of Commerce were how do we fix what's happening in this town? What do we do? And they looked at places like Soho in New York, where they were okay, that was
how did they turn it around?
How did they turn it around? It was kind of a shithole. They brought in the artist. The artist came because the rent was cheap and they got good studio spaces there.
Right.
And then the artists made it cool and they put their sweat equity into the neighborhood.
Right.
And then other people wanted to live near where the arts were happening. And suddenly it was this cool place and had the better finance situations and stuff like that. So the artists were responsible for reinvigorating this
It's
scene.
a 30-year gentrifying project.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, Detroit's going through that right now. You and I probably both know artists that moved to Detroit. And now it's
cool.
the houses are worth twice what they were worth 10, 15 years ago. But
they
started for $50.
A few years
ago.
Yeah.
And we both know cartoonists probably an artist that went there. So keep going.
So they were this is what we'll do to this town, this little town, where there's a whole bunch of empty storefronts here.
Right.
We will offer it to a group of artists to start something. And this is when the CCS stuff got started. They were we would like to come here and do this and take over these empty spaces and make a school for cartoonists. And there's a lot of cartooning energy in Vermont, New Hampshire. There's tons of cartoonists that live there. James Kachalka and Allison Bechtel and stuff.
Do they have a cartoonist laureate? Is that one of the states?
Yeah.
That has okay. So I don't know why I remember that. I don't know why I remember that. But there's only 2 or 3 states that have a cartoonist laureate. So that's anyway. So keep going.
The best states. So there was a lot of support for it from local artists and people who were oh yeah, I love this cartoonist that lives in our town. So let's do this. And so they were basically given the space to start their school. But it's awesome and it worked and it was great. But being the second year of students that was there to change this town was not the most fun for me personally. I was this place is pretty rough. I just come from Chicago where there's great arts and culture and food and stuff. And then now I'm moving to this tiny town where the primary industry is methamphetamines and like prostitution and like it's all good, but like it also just felt very weird to be the gentrifying force there. Like I was living in a building that they were going from student housing, or they were going from low income housing to student housing. They were trying to make this transition, so they were trying to force the other tenants out.
Right.
And of course I didn't realize this, but before I was like, I'll live in this building, the rent's cheap. So there was like a lot of tension between the residents of the town and the students, and like some violence and some scary moments and things like that. So, so it was just a weird year, and I've heard it referred to by CCS people as the lost year of CCS.
Oh, great. And what a wonderful year for you to jump in the water. That's great. Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah.
So it's tough for me because people are like, oh, you went to CCS. That's such a cool
Do you recommend
thing.
it?
Do you recommend it? And I'm like, listen, I do, because now it's great. And like, it's amazing. And so many artists have come out of there, and the visiting artist program and blah, 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 blah. And it's a beautiful natural place. Like Vermont's gorgeous. It's on two rivers that intersect as well. So you're like, this is so beautiful. But I cannot speak from personal experience that I had a good time there. I learned a lot, and I'm glad I went, and it really reassured me, because I had a lot of imposter syndrome at the beginning, that I was like, oh no, I got this. I can be a comic artist. Like I can figure this stuff out. This is great. Right. Because I just didn't, I was like, I've never taken a class in comics before. And I don't think that I can do this professionally until I've at least taken one class. So I spent the year taking classes, but I was real burnt out by the end of it. And I was just really like, do I want to do this professionally? Like it's like very male dominated, and the energy is weird. And like, it's just constant. And, all the assignments were sort of not the stuff that I wanted to be making. So I was really like sort of forcing myself into a square peg. And like, it was just. Was the saving energy around that time, the live journal pals and the pals you had made at Comics Con? Because that sounds like that's a countering energy to everything you've just described. That was amazing. It was really, really wonderful. But the actual, solution, the actual saving grace, the angel from on high, was Linda Berry.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Was Linda anywhere physically near there, or? So
she came as part of the visiting artist program.
Oh, okay. Because I think of her West Coast, right?
She lives in Wisconsin.
Dave Kellett in geography.
Yeah, spoiler alert. When I
things that go great together. Yeah. All right.
She later became my thesis advisor. So it justified me moving back to Chicago because she was in Wisconsin.
And also doing it remotely. Okay, yeah. Okay, yep, great.
So Linda Berry came, and at the time she was sort of touring this workshop that she was doing about creativity. And
yes, I've seen snippets of that, and it's delightful, by the way.
If you
get a chance to do it, by the way, if you're listening, yes, absolutely. There's two people here saying this is a great thing. I cannot
recommend it enough. If you are not a comic artist, that's fine. It will help you in every creative aspect of your life.
And this will actually come into the conversation that I want to get to eventually with you, which is in terms of trusting your line and all that sort of stuff. She's really good about teaching yourself to accept where you are, find joy in where you are, find energy in life in the immediacy of it. And it's, So anyway, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, she's all about like the way that kids draw and this instinctive thing. And it's
akin to how like we forget that we know how to dance. We knew how to dance when we were 2 years old, and we forget.
Right.
It's the same thing with art. Yeah, absolutely.
But it was the antithesis of what I had spent the entire year doing.
Right.
So they were the whole year they were drilling us on like the technique and the technical aspects of how to build a comic. And like, you got to know all of the Photoshop tools, and you got to know how to scan at certain DPI, and you got to know like the publishing industry and
And you got to go home and play Halo with the other 20 guys.
And then you go home and play Halo in the dark, and you never see sunlight because you get up before the sun rises.
And as you walk to school, you avoid the meth sale, and that's how that's what life is.
Yeah, and a lot of it was really just like, you may never make any money in this industry.
Congratulations, this is comics. Yeah, you're like, thanks, I love this energy.
Yeah. And it was this whole comics will break your heart thing. Yeah. And so I just spent the whole year just being like, I am getting into a punishing life.
Right.
I have signed myself on for this. Is this really what I want to do?
Right.
And right at the end of the year, Linda Berry came and she taught this workshop. It was a 2-day workshop. The first day, like, absolutely exploded my brains all over the wall. Like, it was so incredible. Just like, it just unlocked my heart in terms of creativity.
Right.
And it was so cool and so amazing. And again, it was just sort of all about like finding that love and finding that joy and that instinct of making art the way that you did as a kid. And like, why did you start making art? And is it really about making money, sort of thing? And so I had this first day, and then I went back to my apartment and I did not sleep because I was just like vibrating with the energy that she had brought to this program. I was just like, oh my God, this is like a revelation. I like, it's turned everything around for me. And like, I can do this. I can find joy in this industry. This is going to be great. And so then I got up really early before the next day of the
So
workshop.
now I'm imagining you walk into school the next morning and the Met sale is going on the street. You're like, good morning, everyone.
Oh, would you like a flower?
Yeah, exactly. You're like skipping down the street as the prostitute is leaning on the truck. You're like, oh, hello, everyone. Hello.
But I was also like real tweaked out because I hadn't slept.
No, yeah.
And I was like, my brains were being rearranged and I was like vibrating at a weird frequency. So at the time that I lived in White River Junction, there were like 3 stores that existed in White River Junction. There was a pizza parlor, there was a typewriter repair store, like you do.
Yeah, sure.
And there was a bagel shop.
Okay.
So across the street from my apartment is a bagel shop. So I was like, okay, I'm going to treat myself to a bagel this morning because it's a whole new world for me to be in. And I'm really excited about this workshop. And so I like went into the bagel shop. It was really, really early in the morning. It's like right when the bagel shop opened. But there's already a line because it's the only game in town. And right in front of me is Linda Berry, waiting in line to get a bagel. So Linda Berry, if you don't know, has a very iconic look. She has these beautiful braids and she wears a cool bandana. And then she has this incredible suede jacket with fringe.
Yes.
And she's just resplendent in every way.
I would describe her as you can't not notice her in a room. Yeah.
She's a beacon.
Yeah.
So I'm standing behind her in line and I'm just sort of like vibrating, being like, holy shit, there she is. Oh my God. Oh my God.
I wonder what bagel she's going to order.
Right. And so I'm standing right behind her and I'm like, I got to say something. And so I like tap her on her fringe jacket shoulder and she turns around and she goes, oh, hey. Or no, I don't even think I tapped her on the shoulder. I was just like, there she is. I'm just going to gaze at her lovingly. And she turned around and she kind of noticed me and she was like, oh, hey, you're in my workshop, right? And I burst into tears. And it just all kind of poured out of me that I was like, I don't know about this industry and I'm so burnt out and I'm in here and I don't like this town and I'm making a huge mistake in comics and my first book just came out, but like it's weird selling it because like they're sending me to Barnes and Nobles and I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to afford to have this job.
Right. Even
Even though this is an instinctive thing that I love doing and I really want to do it, but like they're making me change things about how I do it to make it more marketable. Yeah. And I'm just like, I don't know. I just don't know. And we're standing in the bagel line and she kind of takes this all in. And Linda Berry goes, when people make art so many times, it's like they have this little baby. They have this perfect little baby and it's this reflection of themselves and it's this perfect thing that they've created. And they have the little baby and then they jump on the baby's back and they say, ride me to the bank, baby. Crushing the baby. But if you have this baby and you nurture it and you learn from it and you let it grow and you give it time and attention and love and care, the baby gets stronger and bigger and like, eventually it'll take you to the bank. It'll carry you to the bank. But that takes time and love and energy and nurturing.
Years until the baby can earn income.
Right?
Yes.
And it was exactly what I needed to hear.
But that is great advice, though. I've never heard that put that way.
It was the perfect thing that I needed to hear at that time. She like reached into my soul and like turned and screwed the light bulb back in. And it was just incredible for me to think, like completely reframe how I was thinking about art because I'd been like, oh, this is an industry. This is a job. I have to make money or publish or perish. And like, all this stuff about it. And I was like, what's going to sell? Maybe I should be making like violent, scary, mean comics instead of what I like doing.
Right.
And she just was like, no, you got to nurture that shit. You got to like take care of it and like treat it with respect and love and care. And I was like, oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That makes
amazing.
That makes way more sense. Yeah.
And like, so part of me being like, all right, what does my art need to flourish? Like, I need to get the fuck out of here. Like, I need to go to some place that inspires me and lets me be inspired and feel comfortable and not feel like I'm, running uphill all the time.
Right.
And so then she was my thesis advisor and I did my thesis year back in Chicago where the comics industry is really fun and cool and there's a lot of really interesting work going on. And that was exactly what I needed. I needed to like take care of the baby.
Hey, gang, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we'll tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
Yeah, because when you do, you'll get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And you'll get access to our exclusive Discord server, a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And ho Nelly, if you want even more comics goodness in your life, check out the new drawing show that we're doing with our pal Kevin McShane over at wrongwayshow.com. That's wrongwayshow.com.
In each episode, we'll show you how to draw your favorite cartoon characters the wrong way.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics. It's actually kind of funny that we didn't meet for 20 or so years while we were producing comics, because the you that I met, I don't know, two years ago, a year ago, I don't know when we met, but anyway, that Lucy was super comfortable with line, with like the joy, the I don't know how to describe it other than to say you were so in your own skin and happy about it that it's hard for me to imagine the how crappy it must have been, the 21-year-old version of you, like not sure. Because the you I associate with is such a flowing, comfortable line that's super confident and puts down way more lines than I ever will on an average day, and is so happy about it and moves on from them, lets them exist, and you know what I mean? Like doesn't
live with the mistakes,
and is not trying. Like I guess a more complimentary way to say it is produces way more lines than I will ever produce, and tries to monetize 1/100th of them in the sense that I just feel like you draw more and it brings you more joy than it does for me.
We probably draw about the same amount. I'm a sketchbooker, so I draw in my sketchbook every day.
However, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like you go straight to ink. You don't pencil anything, right?
Yeah, I very rarely pencil something unless I'm doing something for commercial illustration purposes.
Right, or really need to nail a layout, I'm sure. Yeah. But like whenever I'm looking over your shoulder, I'm like, oh, wow, what lovely line art right away from no penciling at all.
Well, thank you.
Right to ink.
Yeah, I want any aspect of it that feels punishing to be removed from.
Ooh, what do you mean by that?
So to me, like the parts that I really hate, I just don't do them. So like, I just don't do that shit. Like when I was at CCS, they were like, you got to do thumbnails, and then you got to do like pencils in a certain way, and then you got to do inking, and it's got to be really big, and like then you got to like do all this sort of technical stuff to it. And I was like, oh God. So you have to draw each page like 4 times?
Yes. Yeah.
Before you're done?
And that I super agree with you. Yeah. Drawing
and
it
I
4
was
times,
like, this is bullshit. I'm not doing this shit.
Yeah.
So I don't thumbnail. I never thumbnail. I do really loose pencils when I do pencil. They're essentially what people would do for a thumbnail, like sort of stick figure situations. And then I just sort of give myself permission to go straight to ink from there. And like, if I fuck up, I fuck up. I can fix it with whiteout or on Photoshop or whatever. But that sort of the practice of doing that has given me a pretty confident line and just being able to do that. And, not to like turn this into the Linda Berry show, but another thing that she told me during that workshop is that she has this novel called Cruddy. Mm-hmm. And, she was only making comics before she made this novel. And she was like, no, I want to write this book. I have the story in me. But she sat down to write it at a computer, and she would write out a sentence. And then she would be like, no, that's not perfect. I'm going to delete it. And then she'd write out like 2 sentences, and she'd be like, no, that's not it either. And so it was taking her fucking forever to make this book because she just kept being like, no, it's not perfect. And it was so easy for her to digitally delete it immediately. So she went to the dollar store. She bought like a 20-pack of those yellow legal notepads, and she used the materials that she was really comfortable using that she would draw her comics in, which was a Sumi ink dip pen. And she wrote out the entire novel in that beautiful Linda Berry script. Right. She wrote the whole book on these yellow legal pads. And
so let's pour one out for the transcriptionist on that.
Exactly, which I think was her partner. So, done of love, at least. But yeah, could you imagine like these wavy papers?
One of my, this is a digression, but it's along that exact same line. One of my favorite chapters in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy
which is sort of the sci-fi humor book. I don't know if you've ever
love
read
it.
Oh, would you? Okay, so there's it might be one of the later books. Maybe it's so long. And Thanks for All the Fish. I don't know, but the best writer in all of galactic history, right, was famously wrote on these specific leaves in these specific trees.
Oh, yeah.
And so what they're like is like, imagine what we could get from that author if we went back in time, because they have that facility. We'll go back in time and we'll give them a word processor, right? And so they go back in time, they send the word processor, and it all comes out shit. It's just, and also I think he becomes an alcoholic and like hates his writing. But also, like, I just want to co-sign that whole thought, because I always tell younger cartoonists to physically write your scripting, your dialogue with a pen on a paper.
Yep.
And one of the reasons I do it or would tell them to do it is because everything that you scratch out, everything that you circle and draw an arrow to the other side of the page, it doesn't leave the page. It's still there.
Yeah.
So if 4 hours from now, you're like, wait a minute, what did I have before? Or I can still use this word that I had scratched out from this and bring it down
this
here.
This idea is good, but just not
There's
right
a
there.
utility in writing it on a page. Do you script out by handwriting, or do you, I mean, to be fair, I do both. But when I really need to work out a tricky page, I'm like, I do it on a physical piece of paper with a pen. Yeah.
Usually in pencil, because it's like pleasing. I like the scratchy, scratchy noises and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's
the
the thing.
tactility
Like,
of it.
the tactility of it. And like, that's really pleasing to me. And comics is punishing. It will break your heart. There's so many aspects of it that are punishing. Like, the publishing industry is hard, and the money stuff is hard, and it's a labor intensive experience. It's hard on your body, and it's hard on your relationships. And it's every aspect of it is so punishing that, like, why would you do it in a way that hurts you more, like is more punishing?
Right.
So, this is something I always really encourage students in workshops that I teach and stuff, that I'm like, it doesn't matter if the materials that you're comfortable with are like considered shitty by some standard.
Right.
If you're comfortable with it, that's the perfect material. That's the best material for you to use.
Right.
And I started out making stuff on like copy paper, and like even as an adult, and making cartoons on copy paper, because it removed the preciousness of things for me. And like, that feeling of like horror when you get a new sketchbook and it's so, it's pristine. And like, as soon as I draw in it, what if I fuck it up?
With the ivory paper. Yeah.
I think those should not even be sold at art school.
Like when a family member gives me that in love at a birthday or Christmas, something, I'm like, thanks for giving me the worst gift ever.
Yeah,
this
right.
will never get used.
Like, I will put this in a drawer with all the other ones.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the back of a telephone bill, I'll draw all over that, and that'll be great.
It's like the greatest art I've ever made.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm scanning it, trying to recreate it digitally. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I agree with you that there's it's not the materials. And now, don't get me wrong, having lovely materials is nice.
Totally.
We both love it, but you do not need to spend a lot of money to start. That's certainly the case. So I agree with you on that. How do you draw, by the way? Let's just talk about that for a second. Because speaking of which, can I jump on my own question there? You said a second ago that you're like, I thought I had to draw big. And one of the things that I notice about you, both what you have done here this weekend, but also what you share online, is that it does seem to be at size. You share at size, or you draw at size what you share.
The biggest I go is usually like 9x12 for my graphic novels.
Right. Talk about that for a minute, because like we've both seen Schultz originals where.
Oh,
I mean, when I look at
beautiful.
them, they look 4 feet wide, and then he folds them in half and stuff. But I'm like, how could you draw that way? But and then I also see, what's his name, Steve Bell from The Guardian, who draws comic strips that are
teeny weeny,
like 3.5 by 4 inches or 4 inches wide,
right.
Teeny little comic strip. Like, how does he do that? So tell me about how you decide what size is comfortable for you and why you do it that way. And
it's comfortable. It's like the size that works for me. And again, this is like something that they were like, you have to draw big. And I was like, that's more drawing.
Right. It is physically more drawing.
More drawing. That's more work for me. And that's going to take longer. It's going to be a huge pain in the ass to scan it, because I'm going to have to scan it in pieces or find a really big scanner. I'm like, this just seems like a bad way to do it. And I have seen the amazing effect that it can have on artwork. But again, this is something that I'm like, this is the way it works for me. Maybe it doesn't look as good. I'll live with my mistakes. The work is made, like perfect being the enemy of done.
Right.
I just want to get the stuff done and told, and like make it good in a way that's comfortable for me and makes me happy, because I don't want every aspect of this to be punishing. I know what burnout feels like. I know what feeling like, oh, fuck it, I'm never making comics again feels like. And I don't want to do that to myself. I don't want to be the one responsible for that. I'll blame the publishing industry, but like, not me.
Right, but that's where I wanted the part of how the impetus for this conversation got started is because I want to talk to you about how perfect being the enemy of done, which I think is a great summary of where I wanted to go into for this. You do perfect as the enemy of done enough. There's 10,000 hours of iteration of that. You also get really, really good at going fast.
It's muscle memory.
And so the you that I met is already at that 10,000 hour point. And so now I'm just in delightful admiration of how committed you are to putting down a line. It stays and you don't correct it. You don't move on from because it's also has the benefit of 10,000 hours behind it.
Yes.
Does that make sense in terms of the compliment that I'm trying to pay?
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much. I also had a drawing teacher in art school who's a really cool drawing teacher. He used to make us do like stuff where we would be standing and we'd have a piece of charcoal taped to the end of a long stick and we'd be drawing on paper on the ground and stuff, which, it like connects something chemical in your brain where you're like connect your shoulder to your hand to the paper and kind of thing. Right. It's really cool. So like stuff that I was like, this is horrible. I hate this, but actually it was like really good for me as an artist. But he used to call, when you draw and you kind of make like little hatchy marks along your line.
Yes.
He used to call those hesitation marks. Like in
That's a description of my entire career, but yes. Because I draw the Hirschfeld way where like I make a thin to thick line by 10,000 lines.
Right.
But when you said that
cool.
last night, I think it was last night or yesterday, I was like,
Watterson does that sometimes. And it's like, it's so cool and can look great. But I think I was so traumatized by this experience of him being like, those are hesitation marks. And he's just like smoking in class and like sitting on a stool, just being like, no. That I was like, well, I'm never making that again. Like, holy shit. Okay. Just a single line. And it got ingrained in me like in the course of this class. And, but yeah, I really just want to like get it out. I have a funny idea and stuff. And I just want to like blurp it out onto the paper in a lot of cases. So I have a bunch of different kinds of books that I do. I like picture books and cartoon collections and graphic novels and graphic memoirs and travelogues. And the cartoon collections are all collected sketchbook drawings. Mm-hmm. And none of those I penciled beforehand, unless it was like kind of a tricky angle or something. And I was like, I'm just...
And I imagine 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20, you clean up a little bit digitally.
Yeah, I clean them all up digitally before publishing. Sure. And like, color them digitally. Which I hate. I hate it so much. It's like my least favorite. I have a colorist for my graphic novels now, and I am like,
you're like, this is everything I wanted.
Yeah. Like, here you
Shovel the money towards them, please.
Here you go. I don't know. Yeah. But it's interesting because those books, like people will be like, how long does it take you to make a book? And I'm like, well, for a graphic novel, it would take like 2 years to 5 years. It's a long time kind of thing. But then I have this other book that took me like 3 months. Because I'm like, I had all of these drawings in my sketchbook already, and it was just a matter of like scanning them and editing them and sending them to my publisher.
Collating, organizing, and bing, bang, boom, you're done. Yeah.
And like I would put a lot of stuff on Instagram. I've recently quit Instagram now, but like that was a great, it was a great audience for it, so I could kind of beta test these things where I was like, oh, people like this comic, and like this will go in the collection.
Right. Still trusting yourself, but ultimately saying like, oh, this one of the 10, this one really got noticed. That's definitely going in the book. Yeah, exactly.
So that was really handy, and I'm gonna miss it.
Yeah. Have you just out of curiosity, are you on Blue Sky? I
am on Blue Sky.
Okay,
yeah. It's the one thing I'm doing now. And I have a Patreon, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really gonna miss Instagram. It was a good like, image based.
It was,
platform.
And who knows, it may yet get split back off if the courts, I don't know.
God, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, I know.
That would be so good.
But what aspect of your cartooning now brings you the most joy when you're doing it?
It's...
What's the moment where you're like, oh, this is lovely. I wish I could just bottle this moment up,
Yeah.
Because there are moments where you're like, I hate scanning, or I hate, I don't know. I'm thinking of all the parts that I hate. I'm not a good colorist myself. I'm colorblind, so I actually have a colorist, Beth, and who is amazingly talented and delightful. And it's so funny to me whenever I give a note, because there's kind of like the gentle hand on the shoulder, like, okay, Dave, let's remember that we're colorblind.
You're right. Like, let's thank you for that.
You know what? We're gonna let me make this decision. I'm like, you know what, Beth? How about that? How about you make that decision? That's fine.
The original.
Yeah.
Yeah, my colorist is so good, man. She's awesome. Whitney Koger, she's really, really good. But anyway, so I my favorite moments in comics, I have two in various processes. And the first is just that moment where I feel like I tapped into some kind of collective experience in usually a sketchbook comic. And I'll have this moment where I'll be like, oh yeah, this is funny. This thing that I just experienced. And I think I can translate it visually into a funny comic, and I'll make it, and I'll like show it to my partner, I'll show it to my kid, and they'll laugh really hard because they're like, yeah, oh, yeah, I recognize that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that moment of just being like, I had the thought, I executed it, it's done, it's there, here you go kind of thing is like, well, that's the best. That's the machine working perfectly.
Right. Is it the final publishing is the distant icing on the cake?
Right.
The true joy comes in walking across the room and being like, come on.
Like, look at this. Like, I just did this. Isn't this funny?
That's delightful.
Right.
That's
and my kid laughing at my comics. Oh my God. Like if I could just snort that, it would be amazing.
Those are, because it's only for me 1 in 100 where because like they see dad doing this or that. But when I truly get them, it's like, oh, that is the ultimate drug.
Right. Like,
and that's why I said the ultimate compliment I can pay to you is to say thank you for what you've given to my family.
Kids were laughing about my stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a damn delight. And okay, so now let's talk. What is your least favorite part of the process? What's that? I mean, I'm imagining writer's block or being 2/3 of the way through a project and not knowing how to finish it.
Well, there's a point in every project where I'm like, why am I doing this? No one's going to like it. It's totally
I made bad
stupid.
choices. Why am I
bad
on
choices.
this path?
I'm in too deep. I can't escape it. Like, oh my God, should I just change my name and move to another country? Like, what am I going to do? Yeah, there's a point in every project where that period happens, and that's a really rough period. But yeah, I'm also like, I'm very annoyed by certain parts of the publishing process. And you know, every time I feel like I got a handle on it, I'm like, okay, I understand how publishing works. They change stuff. And I'm like, damn it.
Yeah.
Now I got to relearn the whole system. And it's very not intuitive for me. So like having an agent is really helpful for me who can just like, I'll be like, why do they do this? And she can
especially
be like,
with a 20-year relationship. Where you both know and trust it. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely, yeah.
And in fact, we did our will this year. Like we did our living trust kind of thing this year. And my Midwestern lawyer who just handles like wills, I was like, okay, well, I'm a creative and I have intellectual properties and I have royalties and I have original artwork, and like, what is that in turn? Like, how do I put that in the will? Like what do? And she was like,
what do make magic word to give money and paper to other people?
Yeah. Like, what do I do? So she was like, I have no fucking idea.
For the IP stuff? Oh, because
none of it.
You are not a common client. Yeah.
Right.
The idea of you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So she's like, I've never worked with a creative before. I don't know what to do about all that. You got to ask somebody.
Can I tell you? Meanwhile, my wife and I in LA, anytime we talk to her, they're like, yeah, I deal with this stuff all day. Like
in LA.
The LA, they know that. They're
I'm
like,
sure if I was in New
I don't
York.
know how to give a farm to a child. I don't know that. They don't know how to do. But, you know.
She's like, do you have a boat? And we're like, fucking what? No. Do you have a cabin in the woods? No, we do not.
How many bushels of hay do you think you have at your death? What? No, I don't have that. What are you talking about?
How many corn stalks do you have? So she was like, I don't know. You got to ask somebody. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to ask my agent who's been with me for 20 years. And she's always been my conduit to this professional world. And then she'll be able to help me. And I wrote her and I was like, hey, you know, like we're doing our trust. I got to figure this out. Like, do I assign a person to be my agent in this? And like, is that something maybe you could do? Or like, but like, who do I talk to about this basically? And she wrote me this really weird email, and I've known her for 20 years and I've never gotten an email like this from her. And it was this very, very professional toned, like, I cannot discuss this with you as a client.
Oh, had to make it very clear with the causalities and the causalities of what she was saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck is this email from her? I don't get it. And I wrote back and I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. But like, who do I talk to about this? Like, who do I ask
I'm not
about
asking
this?
you to do
and
it.
she was like, I cannot tell you what
because
to do
it could
here.
be, I see, because they could be slanting you one way or the other.
Yes. And I'm like, I realized that this is because of the history of comics creators getting fucked over and their agents like taking all their money and all this stuff. And like, I totally get it. I think it was probably some boilerplate thing that her agency sent
She's
out.
like, listen, we both know what happened with Superman.
Right.
I am not giving you advice on your estate.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of her as this like, professional person who's helped me for 20 years.
Right.
So I'm like, why? But who do I ask?
We're nice to each other. Just point me in a direction. Yeah, exactly.
So like, I have to find an IP lawyer and like figure this stuff out and all that jazz. And I was talking to Dylan, whose wife is a lawyer, and she gave me all kinds of advice on this. So that was really great. The yay Comics Camp for answering all of my questions. Still, 20 years into my career, I still am like, how do things?
Yeah, but because, and this is part of the problem with every art school, is that there should be 1 or 2 semesters of a class that's just like, this is how you freelance. This is how you manage your cartooning business. This is how you pay your
taxes.
This is how you, is how you do cartooning, the business side of things. You know, and they don't, but that's, They
do a little bit at CCS.
Do they? Okay, good.
They have like the
more power to them. Okay,
classes there. But
I'm glad you corrected me on that, because when I went to SCAD and I was lecturing, I was like, you guys have to have.
They should definitely.
You got to add some stuff.
Yeah.
1 or 2 semesters at least, like basics of balancing a checkbook, basics of invoicing. How do you do that? What are the words that you use? That kind of
but like so many people do it so many different ways and things.
I know, but at least
an
attempt would get people started at 21.
And
I remember just being like, how make money appear in checkbook?
How to take check.
Exactly.
Make it into life.
So now, as a final, because I've kept you long enough, but as a final sort of question, like what because to me, and maybe I hope you take this as a compliment I intend, is that from an outsider looking in, you seem like you are living your best life and you're doing exactly what you want to be doing. I know that might be too easily said, but what still is left that you would like to do that you haven't yet done in cartooning?
Well, what's really nice for me is that because I make all this wide variety of books, I can kind of like, if something is annoying, I can like take a break from it and work on a different book deal.
Yes.
So I get to do these cool things. And only recently in the past, like 8 years or something, have I started getting into picture books, which is really fun. And it's a really cool form of comics making that I'm really enjoying. So that's really cool. Part of me would love to do, I don't know, like I've always made comics of things that interested me. And then when I hear that they're like women's interests or things, it really like astonishes me, because I don't think of that. I'm like, well, but like, okay, this one I made about parenting, like that's not a woman's interest. Like men are also parents. Like everybody has parents. And so I would love to make a book that reframes that a little bit. And
interesting.
The books that I've made in the past, like I made one about reproductive medicine, and I made one about food and family relationships, and I made one about parenting, and the through line of all of this is frequently food. It's frequently food, to be quite honest. Like I was raised by a caterer, and I'm a huge food person, and I love to eat. Yeah. So like my middle grade series is it's the story of these 2 stepsisters finding their place in their family, but it's actually teaching middle schoolers about the food supply chain and like where their food comes from, and indoctrinating them into this like farm to table thing. Because throughout, they work on a farm, and throughout there's like diagrams of like, here's how you make maple syrup. Like, isn't this cool? And it tastes really good straight out of the thing. And so that's like my subversive thing. And I think that a lot of reviewers traditionally don't get it. They're like, this is a women's interest book, or like, who cares about food? Like, this is just like Instagramming your lunch sort of thing.
I want to hear more about that voice, by the way. That was great.
Thanks,
that feels like a woman's interest book.
It's my Goodreads
I
voice.
do not enjoy life very much, and I'm just very angry about it in a quiet sort of way.
Right. But loud online.
Hold on, I got to finish my review of Lucy's book.
Yeah, right. And it would be great to make a book that was, I don't know. I was in conversation with Tessa Hulls like a little more than a year ago, and we're sitting up there, and it was really cool. It was for the Boston Comics Roundtable, and they get comic artists together who just have like a common interest outside of comics and have them talk about it, which is really cool. And both of us really like to ride bikes, so we were mostly talking about bikes. But her work is very different from mine, but it deals with the same stuff. It deals with family, and I have books about family and stuff, but it's just a very different vibe. And hers is very dark and intense and like intricate and explored. And she's got all this stuff about inherited trauma, and it's really researched and really thought through book. And it's exactly the kind of thing I don't like doing when I make my own work. I'm just like, I just want to enjoy life and be fun and have like a story about food. But, she just won the Pulitzer Prize for that book. And it's such a incredible, challenging book.
And it's only the second graphic novel to win the Pulitzer Prize, by the way.
And it's her first and only
And it's her
book.
first and only. She won't, not going to do another one.
And she's not going to do another one. And I'm like, man, if I had like the Pulitzer
Also, by
Prize
the way,
backing,
just a fuck you energy on that. In terms of like, I'm out.
Right?
I'm out. Just dropping the mic.
Yeah,
you know?
During our conversation.
I did one book and won the Pulitzer, and now I'm out. I'm going to go,
I did that. Checked it off the list. Yeah. This was my publishing experience.
I'm delighted in that energy. But keep going. I'm sorry.
Like, oh my God, she's living the dream. So it's like so interesting to me because I'm like, if I had written a book that had like garnered that kind of intellectual levels of attention, it would reframe the rest of my work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd
be like, finally, they're going to look at it in a different light. The light I intended. Yeah.
And like, I have this book that I'm like, this is all about reproductive medicine. And it's really about like the medical system in America and how it's failing. And
right.
we have this system that's all fucked up, and like becoming a parent is almost impossible in our modern day and age. And it's so hard. And like, here's all these things about it. But people look at it and they're like, this is just a story of her having a kid. Like, who cares? Another woman's thing.
Here comes Clarice again with her. Oh, I don't like
Clarice, my mortal enemy.
One reviewer on Goodreads. Yeah, exactly.
So every once in a while, like I break free of this whole thing that we've been discussing this entire time where I'm like, I don't want to make punishing work. I want work that celebrates joy and feels a joy to make and is about things like food and family and things that enrich people's lives. And I want people to read this and have a connection to it and be like, yes, oh my gosh. And then they go and have a great meal and they really think about it for a minute. And draw it maybe. And like, that's so cool. And I love that. But I think that people see that a little bit as a shallow thing in a lot of cases. And I just think it's so powerful.
Yeah.
I think joy is really powerful. And I think it's really important. And I think people can look at my work and see that it's a joy for me to make it. And that's really important to me. But I think that then people think it's kind of shallow because of that.
Can I say something though? Because I was talking with Jillian and Ryan North earlier today. And I was saying to both of them that they enjoy joy and how I love them for that.
Oh, perfect.
They enjoy laughing. They enjoy, and I see that in your work. But a lot of people I think that don't enjoy joy think that true art only the true important art only comes from sadness or criticism or suffering and they don't understand that joy that art that is truly joy filled is just as important and just as necessary, if not more, because that's the salvific one saving you from the suffering,
Life is so hard.
There's hard.
So many hard things.
And honest to God, all I want is for my art to bring joy into the world. That if I go to my death and like, that's what I did, great. That's great. That's a life well lived. And that's what I think about your art.
I want to make connections and I want to bring people like peace and happiness. And that is just so important to me. And if it means that I'm going to have this like career of being known as kind of a shallow, like Martha Stewart.
But that's what I'm saying is that it's not. Your work is.
I don't think of it as that way, but I would love for people to kind of realize that. And so I think like if I made a very serious book, maybe they would. I don't know, but it's just one of those things that like you asked me like what I want to do still in comics. Like I would love for people to see that commonality in my work and be like, oh, this is what she's been doing this whole time. She's just trying to like make pleasure happen in comics and for her and for the reader and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, that's what I want to do. And I think coming to this comics camp, it's interesting that you say that Ryan and Jillian were both like, I love joy. This is great. And I think this is something that we all experience here. You're kind of drunk on it by the end of camp because you're
I'm my best self at the end of this thing.
Right?
I'm ready to draw. I'm ready to write.
I'm like a better mom.
I love humanity more. I'm like, this is great. This is what a version of this is what life should be. You know what I mean?
And you think of like the comics industry as this big faceless corporate thing, and like I gotta be a part of it. I gotta make money, and I gotta like publish or perish kind of thing. But this is the comics industry. Yeah. This is it. It's these people and this community and stuff. And so I think all of us are just really here because we want to find that joy in comics.
Right. And it's a lovely gathering of extroverted introverts who that will gather energy in these 5 days and hold on to it for the other 365.
Right.
And it's great. But anyway, as someone, again, outside looking in on someone who enjoys joy and who creates joy with their work, I cannot recommend Lucy's work enough. And I will have all sorts of links on the show and all sorts of things to go check out. But thank you, Lucy, for talking.
It was my pleasure. You are my own child's favorite cartoonist.
Oh, that's lovely
including
to hear.
myself. So
That's lovely.
Yes, before I came here, we were going through your dinosaur book, and my kids looking through the book and just pointing to like the parts that they love so much. And I like got my phone out to film it surreptitiously to show you later, because like that's the kind of shit that I would love to see, right?
That's
like
the
my
crack for
friend's
cartoonists
kid
is reading and laughing.
This is a kid who knows comics, right?
Right.
This
Connoisseur of comics.
Right.
Yeah.
This kid's grown up in it. And so like to like they're looking at the technical aspects and they're like, this part is so funny. And like, look at this part is so funny. But they got really mad at me for filming while I was doing this. So all of the videos are like just a minute of my kid being like, look at this. Hey, stop it.
Hey. Running out to the hallway. No. Yeah. Well, thank
so
you for
it's
that.
like, this mutual admiration club and this mutual, like, thank you for bringing joy to my child
Yes,
club.
absolutely. Both of us, 100%.
Yeah.
And thank you for talking. You are a wonderful, delightful human, and you make wonderful, delightful art. And thank you for being you. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. I'm so glad to be here in Alaska with you.
Yay.
And with thanks for the wildlife for helping out during that interview.
For not dive bombing us?
Yeah, I always think any good comics interview should have a little bit of the element of danger to it, and you delivered that one beautifully. I thought it was great, and thank you to Lucy Knisley for giving time and experience to our Comic Lab listeners. That was a fantastic interview.
Absolutely. And just a reminder, books to check out from Lucy before we say goodbye to everybody for the day. I recommend personally French Milk, and then for YA novels, Stepping Stones, and then Apple Crush, delightful books. And then my fourth and final one to get you on the starter pack of Lucy's great work is Woe, a house cat story of despair. But honestly, any book of Lucy's that you would pick up, whether it's the travelogues, whether it's the food books, whether it's the books about being a new mom, they're all delightful, and I can't recommend them enough. And so thank you, Lucy.
Yes, and speaking of whoa, this is about the time of the show where I say, whoa! You've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my ever delightful friend, Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com, and the handsome new host of the new drawing show over at wrongwayshow.com.
And my close personal friend, Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped, and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com, and another equally handsome co-host of our new drawing show at wrongwayshow.com.
And since we both called out our handsomeness, I should mention there's a third, tremendously talented,
Equally
albeit less handsome co-host.
Not as much
Kevin
as
McShane,
us, though.
not as handsome. Not as handsome. We just got to put that caveat on there. Oh, who are we kidding? If anything, we are but pale shades to his splendor. I will say the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net, and this episode was edited by the ever wonderful Matt Woodard of Windsong Productions over at www.windsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, and we know that you do, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode. And don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Spotify, where we are burning up the podcast charts.
And Comic Lab is made possible by your support at patreon.com/Comic Lab. So I will go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/ Did the moth get dental work done?